The female reproductive system functions in sexual reproduction to produce eggs. Eggs are the female gametes, and should successful fertilization occur, the female reproductive system also functions to incubate the growing embryo and fetus. The ovary is the organ responsible for the egg production, or the production of cells that will become the eggs. And the oviduct is usually where the egg is fertilized. It's the passageway that connects the ovary to the uterus. The uterus is the organ where a successfully fertilized egg will implant and develop into the embryo and later on the fetus. The cervix is a constricted, narrow region at the base of the uterus that is the division between the uterus and the vagina. And finally, the vagina serves the function to receive the penis during sexual copulation, as well as provide a canal for the delivery of the fetus during birth. Now, female gamete production actually begins as a fetus, when the female is in the womb. As a fetus, certain cells called oogonia are diploid, and they divide by mitosis to produce what are called primary oocytes, which are also diploid. Now, these primary oocytes will also begin meiosis I in the womb. However, they only make it to prophase I, where their development is arrested, and they lie dormant until puberty. The primary oocyte will lie dormant with a collection of cells around it, and collectively these cells plus the primary oocyte are known as the follicle. Those primary oocytes lie dormant in prophase I until the female reaches puberty, when the ovarian cycle begins again. Now, each month a primary oocyte will be selected to develop into a mature follicle, which is the primary oocyte along with all of these follicular cells and a fluid-filled cavity. So the follicle gets larger and larger until the primary oocyte completes meiosis I, which produces a secondary oocyte, which is haploid, and a smaller polar body, which is also haploid. So this first round of cell division creates two cells. However, the division of the cytoplasm is unequal. Most of the cytoplasm and most of the contents of the cell go to the secondary oocyte, while the polar body remains much smaller and is sort of made up of these leftover fragments. The polar body can either divide again or it will degenerate. Ovulation is the release of that secondary oocyte when the follicle matures to the point that it will rupture. So here we see in the ovary a mature follicle getting larger and larger until the point where meiosis I completes and produces a secondary oocyte. Now that secondary oocyte will rupture out of the follicle, still surrounded by some of those cells, but will burst from the follicle and actually be released outside of the ovary into the abdominal cavity for a very brief period of time. Now, these structures at the end of the oviduct, called fimbriae, long finger-like extensions, sweep over the ovary in anticipation of encountering one of the secondary oocytes, and it will sweep up that secondary oocyte, guiding it into the oviduct, where fertilization may take place. Now, the remainder of the follicle, the cells remaining in the ovary, continue on as the corpus luteum, and they play a very important role in guiding the development of the uterus in preparation for successful implantation. They do that by releasing many of the female sex hormones, like estrogen and progesterone. Should the secondary oocyte not be fertilized in the fallopian tube, it needs to be removed from the body, along with all of the tissues that were preparing for successful implantation. So in preparing for that event, the endometrium, which is the tissue lining the uterus, will thicken. And it will thicken in order to receive a fertilized egg, which is implantation. However, if fertilization doesn't occur, then not only does the secondary oocyte need to be discharged, but so do all of those tissues, the endometrium, that were preparing for that implantation event. So all of those tissues plus the secondary oocyte are called the menses, and their discharge from the body through the vagina is known as the process of menstruation.